Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome along to one of our kind of regular chats about the work that's going on across the world of AI. This is a really special one for us because it's a tool that we worked on, a project that we worked on that we're very proud of, and it's an opportunity to sit down 1 year on. So, with 95%, I think it's 95% of all AI projects not seeing fruition, like full production, being able to kind of have the opportunity to reflect on something a year later isn't that common. It's a great tool, and it's kind of gained some kind of traction nationally in the media and things like that. So it's very nice to be able to just stop and think and reflect a bit. So the tool's called Hey Geraldine. You may have heard of it. It's something that has been helping people out in Peterborough City Council, as I said, for the past 12 months. I've got a few slides just to set the tone, and we'll run through those and then introduce the team behind the tool. So Hey Geraldine is an AI assistant that helps advise social workers about the best use of technology-enabled care. So Peterborough City Council was kind of like looking for something that would help enable people to get more from tech, and kind of really make that sort of culture shift and start using it more. Um, and as you can see here, it's a case study that's kind of picked up a bit of interest. It's been seen in on ITV News, and there's a great clip of Geraldine kind of being digitized as the kind of the news goes on. It was on BBC News. It was nominated for an achievement award, and it's been picked up as a case study by the LGA, the Local Government Association, and AI.gov.uk. So it's a really good sort of piece of kind of an example of how this stuff can work and is working in practice in the public sector. The team behind it, seen here. So there's Geraldine and Megan up front, but as you can see here, there's an entire team of people who've worked on this over the course of the past year, ensuring that the transformation structure was there in the local authority, making sure that practice was there, and we were kind of informing content, and then doing the technical side of it and kind of making sure the project happened, but the content was being updated and the tooling was working. And really great to have that nomination from the Municipal Journal for a digital transformation award. So that was the team overall. And I think, again, it's really important just to focus on the fact that it isn't just technology on its own. There's a huge person and people element here that kind of makes the difference. We won't go into it massively today, but we're now looking alongside Peterborough City Council. Datnexa have partnered up to roll Hey Geraldine out in a way that allows people to kind of get the best of the experience that we've had, to learn from the mistakes that we've made along the way and kind of not have to repeat those in-house, and very quickly get up and running. We like to say that, the Hey Geraldine can start within a week and be fully onboarded within like 6 to 8 weeks, depending on how busy you are on your side. Yeah, we've kind of made it super simple, and it's something that we'd like to talk to people about, but not today. We've got other things to talk about, which are far more interesting because, if you talk to any technology company, they'll give you the golden story, the kind of the best of. But I think today we want to hear warts and all how it's gone, and like what have been the big learnings. So joining us are the two people behind the headlines. We have Megan English Stevens, who's the Deputy Therapy Manager and Tech Lead for Peterborough City Council, and Geraldine Jinks, Therapy Practitioner and AI Hero. So really the inspiration behind what we've done here. And Yeah, I think I can't tell you how nervous I was, Geraldine, to actually have your name on it, and really building something that there was one stamp of approval that I needed, and I think it was yours. So thank you so much for coming along and talking to us today, both of you. Um, if I could ask, it's been a year on, and just set the scene for us. What has actually changed in terms of your daily practice since having this tool in place and kind of getting used to it over the course of the past year? Megan, if I could come to you and ask you what's kind of changed most.
Yeah, but we get a lot less kind of ad hoc queries coming into the tech team and into Geraldine now. They are coming through the official channels, and people are not having to wait for their responses now. 'Cause, Geraldine has to fit these in between her normal workload. They're getting their responses immediately, which has given Geraldine more time to focus on the complex cases. And she also does a bit of OT work alongside in our main OT team. So that's kind of the main changes I've seen from the team. Geraldine, what's it been for you in practice?
Yeah, most definitely. Reiterating what you've just said, Megan, that I don't get nowhere near as many phone calls, emails, messages, where I'm in the middle of something and I have to stop. So I do feel now as though I can get back to what I like doing, and that's with, going out there and seeing people and doing the job I'm supposed to be doing.
It's nice to hear that that reality as well, because I think quite often when you kind of hear about AI tools and stuff like that, that's always like the promise, and actually to see it in practice is nice. And I suppose getting rid of those, I think, just thinking back, it was that sort of piece of, if we could get some of those smaller queries off your desk and kind of answered, it would give you that time to do more work there. Kind of like the higher complexity and stuff like that, or like more involved, or kind of kind of those sorts of cases. Um, but when it first started, what did you think? What did you think at the outset? Was it kind of
Yeah.
how did it strike you when you
We've
first heard about it?
we've tried to embed tech as usual, sort of business as usual for many years. We're talking pre-COVID. We've
Yeah,
tried lots of different ways, face-to-face training, we've done sort of online training, we've done resources, regular
yeah,
newsletters, and nothing kind of worked. So it was kind of there was that little bit in the back of your mind that says, will this work? Or is this not going to
yeah,
work either? Um, we also were kind of thinking about what was the ask for us to maintain the knowledge base later
yeah,
on, and ongoing. Um, as as you know, the first test version was a little bit worrying. We
yeah,
were having the OT team to test it,
yeah,
and they were expressing a lot of concerns. And I
yeah,
thought, oh dear, something's happening here, or we're going to lose buy-in. But we got
yeah,
the second version quite quickly, actually, because we had a lot of input from the OTs. And the vast improvement between version 1 and 2 was
yeah,
massive. And that really, it was a good job it was timely, because I think we would have lost people if it
yeah,
wasn't. So luckily they got back engaged and they looked at it thinking, oh, here we go again. But actually it was straight away so much better. And it's also the version that we wanted it to be. And we didn't know if AI could be that, because all the generic AI that we use, like Copilot and everything, you have to be so specific in what you ask it to get the answer that you want. And the problem is people coming to ask tech questions don't know the answer that they want. So we wanted it to be able to answer it in so many different ways, with bad spelling, because so many things have got really bizarre names that you can't spell. So we were quite sort of apprehensive about, would it be able to do that, which it can.
yeah.
Um,
It was,
Um,
yeah. Oh, go on. Yeah,
Sorry, no, the only thing I was going to say was, I was very mixed emotions to start with, anxious and excited about the
yeah,
prospect of the chatbot. Um, but looking at it now with people, across adult social care, when it comes to assistive technology, any sort of tech, they're because they don't do it every day, which is understandable.
mm,
People don't remember, they forget.
yeah,
So even though they probably know about certain things, they can't remember, or what sort of situation will that work in, what range has that piece of equipment got, is there a cost implication, what are the alternatives? Whereas now they can actually just go into the Hey Geraldine and ask the question.
yeah,
And it then brings it back. Oh yeah, I remember now, because it's quite understandable. People just don't remember everything.
yeah, yeah. And I think there's so much detail there as well. I mean, that was one of the bits that we kind of picked up. I think the it is kind of interesting. There's sort of like the cultural piece there, isn't, where moving to tech was always something that we, kind of it always felt like if you move to tech, there's something in there because it adds that sort of resilience to the system, and it means that people are using that instead of other sorts of services. And then I think the idea of being able to use this as a new way to reintroduce that information, I think, is kind of, again, like more on the people side than the technology side. Um, but you've really hit upon, from our point of view, one of the big um, kind of learnings that we had was in that you have to deliver something really quickly, and that first version may not be perfect. And compared to like old school like website or IT projects or something like that, normally they keep it and they work behind the scenes for like 6 months or something, and then it arrives and it's pretty much done. Whereas with this, it was more, let's get that out there and work with the team to kind of iterate and kind of get that content in and kind of add in the extra stuff. And then at that point, but yeah, no, I do remember that first demo. It was an absolute nightmare, and it just wouldn't answer anything. Do you remember that? And I was like, finished that, and I was like, but why? But why is this not working? And then we kind of had this sort of penny drop moment that we had a lot of the information in, but we didn't have any of the context. And that's what people need when they do it. And everything else that followed from that, I think, kind of really helped.
And I think it's also quite a big thing that Geraldine was obviously putting her name to this, so her reputation as well. So, with that first version, I imagine Geraldine was probably feeling a little bit sick at that moment. Luckily, it all came to fruition in the end, and it's come to be a great legacy. But I imagine that first version was a little bit worrying for Geraldine.
Yeah, definitely, because it was, with my name attached to it, and people putting in the questions and as well, it's, once you lose somebody's confidence, they wouldn't go back to it, even if you try to convince them, well, no, actually, we've sorted it now, it's better. It's making sure that people trust something, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that was that sort of thing of like building up who was using it and kind of rolling it out over time as well was also key. But yeah, you're quite right. I mean, that's one of the things. You can have the smartest answer in the world, but if you don't trust it, it doesn't matter. It's like it doesn't. It may as well be wrong if it isn't being used. So are you okay with it now, Geraldine?
Yes, most definitely.
Cool.
Megan and myself did a big exercise going through all the information, what was in there, making sure it was as up to date and as correct as it possibly can be. And again, that's my big thing about making sure that it is kept up to date, because we don't want to lose people's confidence. We want them to keep using the Hey Geraldine.
Yeah, that's really, that's kind of like a good piece of advice for anyone kind of working on this stuff, isn't it? It's kind of just keep that confidence there, and it's quality of answer that ties in. I think the other bit that's kind of interesting. So now you're running it and absolutely hands on with it. Back to kind of like the beginning of this. What led you to working with a partner like Datnexa as opposed to building in-house? And were there like any trade-offs that you were thinking of before we got involved? And kind of, could you just talk through, kind of your thinking around that? Because I think a lot of people are kind of going, but perhaps I could do this myself with Copilot or ChatGPT or something like that. What kind of led you down the path of kind of finding a partner?
This is with most local authorities, there's a lot to do with resources and capacity, really. There's a lot of different competing priorities. So we're doing a lot within digital innovation and a digital transformation programme. So there's lots going on within Peterborough City Council. So by going externally, that meant that there was a person who was focused on this task. So it could move quickly, and we had that working model within 3 months. And then kind of those refinements and the teams, and that took roughly a year, didn't it, really, to get to that point. But we had a model that people could use after 3 months. And I don't think we would have been able to have done that internally because of all the other stuff that was going on. We did look at other versions of chatbots using things like Copilot, but you just couldn't control the content in the same way that we can this way. And that was our biggest thing, that we wanted it to be the advice we would give, as opposed to it randomly pulling something from the internet that made no sense whatsoever.
Yeah,
it's unique to our authority, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the thing, you know, it's more or less personalised to Peterborough City Council. And that was the nice thing about it. And us being like Megan says, us being in control of the content, what was in there.
So even to the point of, you know, we've got a robotic cat and her name is Beryl. So if people can't figure out what she is, they can put into the system, how do I get a Beryl? And they go, oh, I know exactly what Beryl is. And it starts talking about the cats and the local services within Peterborough. We wanted to make sure that people were aware of what we could fund in Peterborough, but also what they could privately get, and what also we had in our smart flat, because we've got the virtual smart flat as well, so they could have a look at that, and members of the public by appointment can come into the smart flat and have a go on some of the equipment that we don't provide, so that they can be confident before they buy it that that's going to meet their needs.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I mean, it certainly is. I think it reflects everything that's there, and you know, kind of like with it. And there was also a change in one of the tech suppliers whilst we were doing it as well, wasn't there? So it was kind of updating some of that information in the back end as well, and just kind of making sure it all made sense. When it comes to bringing in, so you brought in an external partner. I think, you know, again, you know, as we go around and talk to kind of like local authority colleagues around the country, one of the big things that everyone's thinking about is, well, all of this technology is great, but it requires funding, and it requires time and money to kind of get going, whether you do it in-house or whether you kind of bring in a partner to do it as well. Could you just run through how funding was secured, and, you know, to your mind, what have the real costs of startup and kind of ongoing work been over the past year?
So it mainly started with a hospital discharge grant. So we started with that for the development and implementation of Hey Geraldine first, and then going into the integration into Teams. And we looked at a transformation fund investment, which is an internal funding. So that initial costs weren't high, and our ongoing annual costs to keep this going, which includes the virtual smart flat as well as Hey Geraldine, is about £4,000. So it's quite a low cost for the high impact it's having and the cost saving to go with it. So I think it's kind of saying to people that you don't have to pay the earth to get a good item. If you know what you want and you've got a direction, I think that you can do it within a reasonable cost. I mean, when we went to the MJ Awards, some of the other projects there were fantastic, but they were eye-wateringly expensive. And being a very small local authority, we do not have that kind of money available. So it's been good to be able to find something that kind of fits our budget.
I think that was all, you know, that's one of the things that we're really keen on, that, you know, like good technology shouldn't cost the earth in terms of, you know, like the amount it costs. And you can do a lot with this by, you know, especially, you know, when you think about what's available out there and what people are able to do with it. Like, say, you see these free tools, and you see, you know, kind of like how people are using it in their own personal life. That can be quite an inspiration to kind of go, well, we could use this in this way and kind of get it going. Do you actually, it could be a good time just to kind of dig into, you mentioned the impact of the tool. How, you know, like, how have you been measuring that? Are there any kind of like key facts or figures that you could be like, you know, this is what, you know, the impact that we've seen so far?
The main thing has been that the waiting list is no longer existent. So now if we get a referral, we can see them the next week. We don't have a waiting list. Geraldine's now been able to go back to what her role is supposed to be, which is tech and OT, whereas it was pretty much all tech before, because we just didn't have the capacity. We had to get through it all. And also there is still more tech equipment being delivered. The problem is we were just looking for some data, but with our equipment change from NRS, we no longer have that data to be able to say the exact number of how it's gone up But before all of that happened, we did know that the issuing of tech had increased and our waiting list had gone down.
Wow. So that, so
I was just going to say that, I mean, we're not going to get away from the focus of all of this was to make sure that person had not, our role is early intervention and prevention.
Yeah.
And with the AI, Hey Geraldine chatbot, things could happen quicker, and that was the aim of the chatbot and our main focus, which has always been about the person in the house who needs some equipment, who we're then not stopping that hospital discharge. We're getting that person home as quickly and as safely as possible and not holding that up.
Yeah. Wow. So it's kind of like job done from your point of view. This is done.
Most definitely, like Megan says, whereas before I'd probably have a 2-week waiting list, whereas now more or less as they're coming in, we can act on them.
Yeah.
And that's without the ones what are already been dealt with by the rest of the adult social care team, what I don't even know about.
Yeah. So it's kind of had that very specific change in your world where that waiting list has gone entirely, but then also increased tech usage across the local authority overall. And also, so presumably as well, that kind of means that that tech is that prevention and early intervention equipment in people's homes that's kind of stopping. So it's better for them overall, right? So it's not, kind of they're able to manage for longer in their own home.
Exactly. And it's a knock-on effect, isn't it? Because any sort of intervention is going to stop prevention, isn't it? And hospital admissions, ambulance, calls, all sorts of things. So, it just stop there. And it's not all about us either providing equipment. It's about social workers looking up on Hey Geraldine and seeing what other solutions there are out there or suggestions that people themselves can fund for themselves or utilize what they've already got.
Yeah, that was an interesting piece, wasn't it? To think about like sort of that found tech or what was already in place, and people could kind of go, well, you could use this mobile phone alarm instead of a medicine reminder clock and stuff like that, right? That was another bit of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's win-win because yes, like we said, it's all about prevention. It's all about making sure people are in their own homes sooner rather than later, safer. But it's not all about throwing equipment at them. Let's look at what they've got and how we can utilize that.
Yeah, no, it is, and it's nice. It's nice to see that also, getting rid of the waiting list is. I mean, I think that's more than we imagined at the beginning. That's phenomenal. There was also a concern where, and we kind of hear it in different contexts for different tools as well, that using this would have created a capacity pressure because everyone would be asking for a lot more tech. That would then lead to a problem in terms of kind of like running the service. But it sounds like is this reducing referrals because people like colleagues are able to do the work or kind of suggest the right sort of tech themselves.
Yeah, because in the bank of questions, answers and solutions in the Hey Geraldine, like I say, it's not all about equipment we supply. It's about other equipment there on the market they can buy. It's about what they've got, utilising what they've got, suggestions, ideas. I mean, sometimes it can be as simple as a laminated notice.
Yeah.
So that in itself is giving people the ideas how they can solve a problem without having to come through to the tech team. So that's why I think a lot of our referrals have come down, because it's giving them the ideas and the solutions of what's there, what they can do.
And that's also it's helping that that individual or that person in Peterborough, because they're not then going on a waiting list waiting for us. We come out, they have to repeat their story all over again to us, and then we write an assessment, and then we issue the equipment. So there's not only the delay of sort of issuing the equipment, but there's that impact on the person having to repeat everything they've already said. So if we can do it with a continuity of worker, with that social worker who's already in there, that's really improving kind of the person's journey as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as well, instead of the social worker going out and then myself or one of my colleagues in the tech team going out to see them, it's less visits.
Yeah.
For that person, so it's less intrusive for them, especially if they're just come out of hospital. They don't want to be bombarded with people visiting them and asking them more or less the same questions.
Yeah. When you talk to people, it's always that thing of why am I having to fill in the same form or answer the same question? This is like the 5th time, and it's a time, like you say, people are kind of they're more vulnerable. They're not in a position where they're wanting that sort of intrusion in their life. So I suppose, the quicker the better, really. It's also that thing of, this is, I really like this sort of example, because that was something that, that you guys were pushing for and doing beforehand. That sort of shift to using more of the technology enabled care and kind of, prevention and early intervention. And the technology in this case it wasn't tech for tech's sake. It was really kind of going, this is your overall like mission of what you're up to, and the technology just fits into it and can help with this bit of it very specifically, and didn't try and go off and do like tons of different things, but really just focused on the bit where it could really provide the most help. And I think to hear that that's actually, now going through and we're seeing it in terms of numbers. I think that's just kind of like, I think that's why this worked well as a product and project overall, because it really knew what it was there to do. So it's very specific in terms of its job. It's been, So if just to jump around a bit, you've mentioned before the content and how it's quality of content that matters, and that helps drive up confidence. How are you finding management of kind of the knowledge base, and now, like a year on, kind of what does that look like in reality on a week basis? Are you kind of like having to do a lot of stuff, or is it like just checking in? How does that work in your world?
It's quite low demand now. At one point it was a lot high demand, because we used, in order to capture the content, one of our other partners was using we sent all of our training details and everything to them, but then they also had a very long conversation a couple of times with Geraldine, and they were using sort of generic AI to capture those conversations. And that was a 500-page document. And when you wanted to change something, because they'd pulled together lots of information, it was just the AI that had done it. As we all know, AI can be very repetitive. So when we changed the Lifeline provider, it was so hard, even using the search function within Word, because it's all on a Word document that gets uploaded. It was an absolute nightmare. So we took the decision to split it into separate documents, because when we first started, I remember yourself saying to us, well, we think that's how it's going to best manage the content. We're not sure how it's going to cope with lots of different documents. And we thought, but this is going to be so much more manageable going on, because it just wasn't manageable. So we split them into sort of themes. So we've got one on Lifeline, then one on sort of on bed sensors, for example, medication, all those sorts of things, so that we can update them as we go. So we have a normal Teams folder with all the information in, and then if we've got something new, we put it in and change the date at the bottom. So it also means when I update them, I know exactly, when I update them onto the website, I know exactly which ones have been edited, so I don't need to just keep repeating uploading these 10 different documents over and over again. So like last week I only had to update 2 documents, so that was fine. So we kind of split it between us, and that Geraldine does the updating the documents on the Word documents, and then I do the uploading into the actual dashboard of Hey Geraldine. So we didn't have any additional kind of time or resource to be able to write this knowledge base, which is why we went down this route of trying to use AI to capture it. So, I mean, if we were to do it again, I would say I wouldn't go down that route. I would probably try and find a way to get that time and resource for us to be able to write the whole thing ourselves, because actually all the editing we had to do, and we had to comb through it several times, because it doesn't matter how many times you look at it, you miss something. To update it, it's probably ended up being exactly the same amount of time we would have spent actually writing it ourselves. So now it's not too bad. And equally, if there's something that's really key that we're like, do you know what, it can't wait to be updated, there is that function in the back of the dashboard of Hey Geraldine where we can write a question and write an answer, and it will just sort of override the document until I update the document. But generally, it hasn't really taken up now, I would say, sort of since we've done that, very much my time at all. And I think, Geraldine, it's been easier for you as well, hasn't it? Now it's split.
Yeah, most definitely. It is more user-friendly now. And as soon as I know something's changed, I'll give you an example. Only a couple of weeks ago, we use our local fire service who go out and do fire safety checks, and they'd changed their website for the referrals. So, you know, straight away I could update the Hey Geraldine and put in the new referral details. So then when anybody went on there, it was there for them straight away. So, you know, it's very good. And like Megan said, keeping it updated, and because it was Megan who sorted them all out into subheadings, it does make it much easier to manage.
And I think, you know, the one thing we wanted for this was for it to not have those AI hallucinations we're also familiar with. And because AI had been used to capture that information, when we did comb the document, there were really bizarre hallucinations. You know, we've got this cat flap for a robotic cat. I had no idea where that came from. It must have got bored with whatever we're saying and just made up its own version.
I love that. So basically this was it's interesting, right? Because you've got the tool itself, which is very much in terms of dispensing the logic, the kind of like information and everything behind there is very, you know, there's like zero hallucination in that space, but actually in drafting that original information, the robot cat needs an electronic.
Needs a robot cat flap, apparently. And there was also another one where a robot was going to come and pick you up off the sofa if you couldn't get off. It was really weird. I don't know where this came from.
That is interesting. It's you know that book, Do Robots Dream of Electric Sheep? Do robot cats need need electric cat flap? That, and also I think it's another good example of the actually AI can be used at different parts of processes, right? And that it needs that same sort of level of, you know, like what you were doing there to make sure that it was of the right quality is absolutely vital to make sure that the advice that it's giving is right. What in splitting that up, do you kind of is there what would you kind of do next with that? Is there anything that you're kind of thinking about? Because that's like a really big shift, and I think also the underlying technology copes with that a lot better now, and it can kind of pull in from different places. Is there anything else that you're kind of thinking about that you'd like to have a look at, or is it kind of this is good and we're just gonna, you know, just keep on maintaining and kind of make sure that it works for us that way?
I think it's with us building on it, isn't it? As new technology comes in, as new equipment, as new ideas come in, it's just building on the knowledge bank, what's already in there. But one key element I would recommend anybody if they're setting up anything like this is not to put costs in. Megan and myself, you know, meticulously try to go through everything because, as you know, costs vary and go up and down. So, and it's not necessary. So we went through and took all the costs out. And also initially it was set up with Fred, who's 79. Well, you know, it doesn't matter if the person's 79, it doesn't matter if they're male, female, or what they are. It's just, you know, a person. Yeah.
But because it used old case studies as part of its information and its knowledge bank, it was using the case studies. So we had to take them out. It was definitely a learning process. And that document that was before it was split up was making it quite repetitive in its advice. You were getting so that, or you would get, we do still get some variations in answers. All the answers are still correct and factually accurate. And it's the same general answer, except sometimes it depends whether it gives you a really thick answer or whether it gives you quite a succinct answer. So that's one of the things we kind of want to be looking at, because we're not sure how we can make sure that it gives you probably can't give the exact same answer. It's still giving the right answer, so we're still happy. But in a perfect world, we'd like it to give the same answer to everybody.
Yeah, I think that again, that you got that thing where it's like you're looking, you've got consistency in uniform, and it's like they're very similar, but they can be different at times, and kind of just making sure that as long as it's giving the right answer, kind of like how uniform it'll be, I think will vary. The one bit we haven't spoken about that I think is was quite interesting in the delivery in that first piece was how we had that we've not kind of explained to people. I think we said we had that first rocky week one, but then there was another process that kicked in that I think was really key in getting us to where we are today, and that was involving the frontline OT team as well, and kind of understanding their feedback and co-designing with them. How did that go for you? How did you find it, and kind of any thoughts or kind of feedback on that?
It was sort of quite intense at the beginning. It did require our team to really commit to doing it, but because the OT team, a lot of them have done a rotation in tech previously, and they do issue their own tech. We wanted to make sure the people testing it knew what the answers were going to be. So we wanted to make sure that it was a really thorough test, stress test. So that was kind of people testing it a couple of times a week, recording their answers, doing feedbacks, and then there was Teams meetings with one of our other partners who were helping with sort of develop that side of the project. So we were having the feedback sessions, and that's where a lot of the resource went in, but we didn't have any extra resource. So it was really down to our team, really pulling together and making that extra time. But I'm trying to think how long that went on for. It was probably about 4 weeks, I would say. I think there was 2 meetings a week. You didn't have to attend both, but to try and capture as many people as possible. And if you were doing it, to use the feedback forms as well. So it really is down to the kind of the commitment of our therapy team for that stress testing.
That, and also that sort of being able to use it across a range of different sorts of questions and things like that. It is, again, I think with AI overall, because it can answer any question. It's not like you can do like an FAQ on the website where you've got a list of questions and you can kind of go through them one by one, because it could answer so many different questions in different ways. Using it in reality and then tinkering with it will give that better response. And I think, there was a huge amount of work going on, and that sort of distillation of all of that into the content and then also how it behaves. Like week on week, it was kind of getting that sort of like quality assurance piece, that review of it, and then redone like on a weekly basis. So I think it was weekly for the first 4 weeks, and then there was like a 2-week phase where there was a bit longer once it had kind of got settled in. I think the other kind of piece is, I think people are kind of quite worried with AI going off and like bringing in information that isn't correct, or like finding stuff up, so not just you've got like the hallucination piece of it, but actually it's kind of more like what safeguards can you put in around the persona of it, or the prompt, or how it's retrieving things to make sure that it's staying on the improved content only. Have you got any thoughts or kind of like tips on that would be useful to share?
I think it's also about people remembering that it is to support people's clinical decision making, not to replace it. and making sure that everyone is aware of that the responsibility still sits with that member of staff.
Yeah.
It's to improve the support that they get from our tech team in quite a timely manner. And because we worked with it where we wanted it so that you could ask a question in a way of really blunt, like medication, and it will give you a big, nice, thick answer about medication, or you could put in your scenario. So we've made it so that you can write about your person, say they've got this problem, they've got these diagnoses, and then it will break down each problem and write a solution for each problem. So we wanted to make sure that it fitted everyone's style of how they wrote it. And again, that was down to a lot of stress testing and asking people in the therapy team to put the wrong information in, to double check that it knew it was the wrong information. Geraldine, have you got any thoughts?
Well, just to say as well, it was also people knowing that if they did have a question and they weren't confident with the results, what came up, or didn't know how to ask the question, there's still always a real person they could ask.
Yeah.
So they know that they're not having to totally rely on the chat bot. They can still always ask that question.
Yeah.
And additionally, if it doesn't know the answer, it sends an email to our tech team email box. So it lets us know who asked that question so that we can get back to that person straight away with the right answer. But also we can then update the knowledge base. So we've got a safeguard in there for if it doesn't know what the question is. I don't think that's happened very often, has it, Geraldine? A handful of times.
No. Yeah. And sometimes it's the way they've asked the question, isn't it? It has been so. But like Megan said, at least if we do get a question and it doesn't come up with that answer or what they think is a reasonable solution, we can update it.
Yeah.
And we also still provide them with the equipment. So they still come through us. We then dish out the equipment to them. So they do have that person contact at the end of it if they've got any queries as well. So it's not like they're completely with virtual Geraldine. And they do have an actual touch point with real people in the tech team.
Yeah.
That was one of the biggest questions we were getting from the media. They was more focusing on the Hey Geraldine that, Peterborough City Council are getting rid of staff because they're using a chat bot instead. And it was never about that. Never about that. It was all about like I said, our focus were the people in the street and making sure our waiting list went down and people were seen and had intervention much quicker.
Yeah. And I think that's such a good point, isn't it? Because I think, a lot of times when you kind of hear, especially in public sector, where people are talking about using AI, and there's this sort of thing of like efficiency and kind of, and then I think it's natural people to think, oh well, what is that to get rid of people? But I think you're absolutely right, and that was so important from day one, and it's that thing of since getting that brief and kind of talking about it like a year ago, I think it's like the Netflix CEOs come out and said, we want people to be 10% better, not 50% less people sort of thing. And that focus on what it can do, to like add value. But I think there is a natural sort of like, okay, well, I mean, in some cases, I think people are kind of pushing more in that other direction, but here it's absolutely that. And it's so nice to see that it's working as well, like as intended when it's getting out there. Are you kind of feeling that there are other people in the team who are like becoming more expert in using tech and kind of really just getting more adventurous with it and things like that?
There's more people used it than what I thought, or some people who I thought wouldn't use it are using it.
Wicked.
And especially, if they've used it once and think, oh yeah, this has worked, oh, that was good. It come up with an answer straight away. And like I say, it's all about building that confidence and trust in people. So once they've used it and it's worked for them, they'll carry on using it.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump around a bit actually, and just you mentioned the media, and I think there's we need to touch on that. So what's it been like being kind of like being the public face of Hey Geraldine, and kind of having all these questions and in front of the bright lights and everything.
Yeah, quite surreal, and overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realise how it would take off like it has,
Yeah.
Initially. So yeah, it's, quite humbled that after 35 years getting that recognition
Yeah.
of the knowledge and the experience I'd got. So yeah, it's like I say, and it's people coming up to me and they're just saying, "Oh, hey Geraldine," and I'd never even seen her before. Yeah, I couldn't believe how much publicity it got.
Yeah, it is. It's very cool. I think you've definitely inspired a lot of people to to think about this differently and kind of how it can work. And yeah, I just think it's just amazing that all of kind of like that knowledge and experience you've poured into this, and then it's having these results in reality as well. It's like the impact of it is just gonna, like ripples in a pond or something, just keep on spreading out and stuff. Have
And
you had
again, like I say, the aim of it is to
yeah,
make sure people, are getting the intervention they need.
yeah,
So, and if that what makes it work, also well and good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is. It's like yeah, that's the point of it. It's like with like IT, and we've had it a lot with like digital and data and AI stuff. It's always like, what, like, okay, it can do that, but so what? And if it hasn't got like a proper so what, then it's interesting. It can be like super cool, and like geeks like me get carried away with stuff. But actually, unless it's doing the so what, then it doesn't matter, does it? That's cool. I think actually, Megan, from your point of view, because I think you've had quite a few questions from other local authorities and things like that since it's kind of since the publicity, the media's kind of kicked off. Are there any questions that you've had more often than not, and kind of what are people asking you when they get in touch from kind of a local authority point of view?
Number one is always cost, because
Yeah.
obviously we're all under a lot of demand. What we need to deliver is going up, but our resources aren't going up. So how can we be more efficient? And that's what Hey Geraldine is all about. Like I said, it's not about replacing anyone. We are a very small tech team. Geraldine is full-time, and then we have two tech support workers who are 2.5 days, and that covers adults and children. So it's a very small team. We had to look at efficiencies because we just haven't got that person resource. So cost was the big one, and the comparison about what else you could get for that kind of cost. Versus the impact, but also very much about the time required to build the knowledge base and how much time we need to invest to keep it updated. And kind of the investing the time in the knowledge base, keeping it updated, was one of the things that 6 months ago we probably would have struggled to give like a really clear answer, because until it's now, we feel like now a year on, we're actually in a place now that it's actually just maintaining it as opposed to continuously working on it. So now very little time of ours, but at the beginning it is a lot. And if you haven't got that extra resource, which we haven't, then you just have to make sure that the people who are working on it really are dedicated to it, to find the time, knowing that actually the impact will be greater than what the extra resource that we've had to put in now, the extra time of ourselves to put in now. So you kind of have to have faith that in the end it will pay off. And that's something that Afi, our sort of transformation consultant, has always said. He's always said, they're like, "Oh, well, what was all the evidence behind doing it?" And we said, well, there was some, but really it was a leap of faith.
Yeah.
And luckily for us, it did pay off. Because I think we've got a lot of staff who've worked here for a very long time, and Geraldine, obviously, with her almost 36 years now accolade, we very much know our people of Peterborough, so we knew what we wanted. So I think you do have to have people with a lot of experience about the area, environmentally as well as the area of tech, to know if it's what's going to be right for you and what's the right direction.
Yeah.
And what hasn't worked. So I think we've tried everything else.
So yeah, I think that's a really nice way of kind of looking at it. And that leap of faith. I think, like I was saying earlier, a lot of AI projects are not landing, and kind of not delivering on what was promised. But I think you hit the nail on the head there about what was different. I think there's the, kind of like the team there, the people behind it, the thinking behind it, and kind of making sure that it was, kind of stayed on track and kind of focused on what it could deliver and what it should deliver. I think really does help. We're coming up to time, and we've gone. I think we had a few questions sent in. And I think we've covered a lot of them. I was just going to say, just to kind of wrap up, a year on, what, and kind of like you've kind of walked the walk and kind of delivered this. Is there any kind of advice, or kind of like what would you tell everyone who's kind of listening in, or how do you make an AI project that works, and what is it about this that you think was the special, like the magic ingredient, apart from Geraldine herself?
I think it's involving the people from the front line who are going to be using it, because we can say, oh, this would help, but we're not the ones who are experiencing that difficulty on the front line. So we had to involve the people who are going to be using it to build it at the beginning. And then also there's a sense of ownership behind the project as well. So people have helped refine it into what it is to make sure that it meets their needs. So I think that's probably the biggest one, is involve people.
And a chatbot is only as good as the information and knowledge what's in it. And like we've said all the way through, it's sort of tailor-made for our people of Peterborough. We know our people, we know the multicultural population we've got, we know the areas of difficulty a lot of people experience, and that's what we focused on.
Yeah.
And you can even see the difference in, we're on quite a lot of borders of different authorities, and even though some of them would seem quite similar to us, their tech services run completely different. The equipment they use is completely different because their demographics are completely different. So you do have to know who not only your people who are going to be using it, but also who is in your area and what their needs are.
Yeah. It's kind of, it's just classic. And it's like, it's using this technology to augment the knowledge, the experience that's there, and kind of help communicate it and get it out there and let people kind of get at it. But it certainly isn't replacing that context and that understanding. Yeah.
We also work very well with our other agencies, care agencies, day centre agencies, all other agencies within Peterborough, and hopefully one day it'll be going out to them as well.
Yeah, I think that's in terms of dreams for the future, is kind of, it's getting Hey Geraldine out there to work with other agencies in Peterborough. As I said earlier, there's a few local authorities who want to kind of take the idea, take the concept, some of the knowledge, and kind of reapply it back into their own local authority to kind of kind of like increase that impact across what they're up to. And I think today has been just a wonderful opportunity to kind of catch up and reflect and think about what, how the past 12 months have gone from where we started. I can't tell you how relieved I am that you like it. And I think, like you were saying, it's amazing, like all of the media and everything that's kind of built up on the back of it, and that sort of awareness. I don't think I'm breaking anything. We had someone give us a call from America the other day, and they said that and basically they'd seen it on the BBC website, and they gave us a call, and they were like, could you just tell us about it? We're like, yeah, of course. So you may be getting an American cousin. You never know. We'll watch this space. That'll be one. But thank you so much for your time today. And really useful opportunity. And great to hear how it's going on. Joe is going to stop the recording, and then if there's just any questions from anyone around the room, we've got a few minutes. So if anyone would like to drop a question in the chat or